Hey guys, welcome back to Project Blame. Regarding my public meltdown over a hover indicator I tried to make it last time... Don't worry, I'm fine. The doctor said I only suffered a mild case of having a Martian atmosphere in my lungs. The book is fine too. For all of you who weren't there, I was trying to make something like this. A white dot that appears only when you can grab the object directly and disappear when grabbed. Unfortunately, I encountered my biggest enemy. My almost non-existent shader graph knowledge. You know, if this dot is physically in the scene inside the object I want to grab, you obviously can't see it. Therefore, I need a shader that would draw the dot above every object in a scene. Luckily, after the last video, I did some searching and found a great object highlight shader on the asset store. Ooh. So, with this working, I could continue to work on the other aspects of this absolutely stolen feature, such as detection, appearance, and rotation. Wait, rotation? Oh, that's the easy part. You see, I want my game to run smoothly, so this dot is just a plane with extra steps. This means if you stand anywhere else than in front of it, it won't be a well-rounded fella anymore. And this is exactly why I have to rotate it every frame, so it would always face the camera. One line of code, that's all you need. But the detection, that was a huge problem. I had to hook up everything with a event system, and that was fun, because it didn't work at all. Like, it did, but sometimes dots would stay visible on both objects, sometimes both would disappear, then one would appear, and so on. I resolved some of these bugs, but still, some persisted. Fortunately, it was nothing game-breaking, so I left it like this and added a distance grab, which works flawlessly. Just the aiming is something you have to get used to. And yeah, I scaled down the dot, and that was it. Now for the juicy buttons you were promised in a thumbnail. I can't even count how many times I tried to make a perfect VR button. Back in Devlog 6 I was pretty close, but my system was still a little too janky. Rigid bodies, colliders, triggers, not good. But wait, what is that? That's right, we got a few more features to play with, and among them our savior, Poke Inductor. This guy can basically tell us when he's near an object with a poke filter and act as a trigger. This means if we put it on an index finger, every time it gets close to our button, the poke interactor will fire a hover event, so we can push the button with an index finger to a certain distance and then freeze it in place until the player moves his finger away, and then spring it back up to start position. So I did just that and it worked. Simple as that. Now model, now texture, and now we only have to add sound and haptics for that good quality button juiciness. Maybe a little more. More. Perfect. Okay, so I made this little guy. Let's call him Jimmy. But we all know that Jimmy is too small for certain tasks. No offense, Jimmy. So meet my new friend, Chunky Chuck. He's basically a Jimmy's clone, because I simply copied Jimmy's code and lightly edited it. Except it didn't really work, because poke event triggering and direct interactor triggering doesn't act the same way. So in order to get Chuck fully working, I had to give him a little code surgery, and after some trial and error, Chuck was fully operational. As long as you don't look at his collider or the part where he sometimes goes through walls. Both problems essentially comes down to how I detect a hand near a button. Simply put, I don't want to use physics to move the button because it's too unpredictable. So moving the button works similarly to the poke button. If I hover over the button and push down, I set position of the button like this. Position of my hand plus distance between hand and button equals new position. And I do this every frame until I reach my end position. But to detect a hover event, I need a rigid body to be present on said button, even if I don't use it to move it. So that's why I ended up with this nightmare in the first place. But hey, if it works, it works. And don't worry, I'll fix that. Then it was time for a new model and texture. Nothing fancy, just a big red juicy button. You will definitely want to push. About my use case for this. Although these models and textures are acceptable, I won't use them in a final game. Well, mostly. The great thing about my new setup is that it's absolutely possible to swap the models and functionality doesn't change at all. So I put my new and improved buttons everywhere I could, and I'll change the models later in development. But wait, that's not all. I realized not everything is about buttons, big or small. You also need switches. And listen, this one is actually smart. I use the poke interaction again. Basically, I set up a collider with a poke filter and changed poke direction to Z-axis. This setting will make sure that the select event will fire only when my index finger comes from here. Not here, not here, only here. And what's better, this setting can be changed while the game is running. Do you see where I'm coming from? So every time I put my finger here, we change the poke direction, flip the switch model, and now we can flip the switch only from the opposite direction. I'm a genius! But of course, I ran into some issues. So in short, I was having a blast while trying to implement this simple idea. But at least it works now. So as the next step, I try to complete the officially first puzzle in the second Mars room. Sadly, I was kinda out of time by this point, so buttons and switches are there, but the puzzle itself isn't working yet. But hey, maybe it will be ready in the next devlog. Hard to tell with my upload schedule when that will be. Maybe sub to find out? Or don't, that's entirely up to you. But if you like this devlog, maybe check out the previous one where nothing really special happens. Trust me, nothing happened there.